Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'm so happy that you can be here for the richness of an amicable divorce. Today I really wanted to talk about divorce. It's a topic that we can't avoid. Unfortunately, we all know somebody that's either gone through divorce or thinking about going through divorce. It affects, family, friends, and relatives. And, having been involved in divorce now for over 15 years, I find that there's a story about divorce that, people think that it has to be a confrontational, difficult situation. And having had the privilege of meeting some of the best people in the field, I wanted to share today one of my good friends and colleague, Fred Siegel. Fred has a wonderful, thriving practice in Stamford, Connecticut, and I would say has the reputation for really just being a fabulous divorce attorney. And it's my privilege to have Fred here today. So Fred, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I know you've been doing divorce much longer than I have. How many years now?
I think it's over 42 years.
That's amazing, 42 years. And how lucky are we to have you here today, right? And as we all know, people particularly thinking about it, or family and friends thinking about it, I know you've experienced some very challenging divorces, but I know that you and I have worked even together on some divorces that you've been able to make more amicable. So could you just share a little bit about, what are some of the things that you would tell somebody that's thinking about it or that knows somebody very close and dear to them about to embark on a divorce?
I think the most important decision that somebody has to make when they're deciding to divorce is who they hire as a lawyer, because it really matters, because the lawyers in the case can really control the tempo and the direction. So if you have lawyers that work well together, that's a plus. People are under the misconception that if the lawyers don't like each other, that it will help them, and it really is the opposite. If you have lawyers who get along and sort of speak the same language, then you can find solutions easier. You don't have to file motions or do litigious kinds of actions, because you can resolve these issues pretty quickly. So there's some lawyers who have a reputation for wanting to really go to court every day, and it's really not beneficial to the parties to do that. So again, if you have two lawyers that like each other, work well together, and the lawyers understand that they work for you, and it's not about maximizing the fees on the case, then that's one of the things that you can do to have an amicable divorce.
And I know you are involved with the IAFL and a lot of organizations where there's some top family law attorneys involved. Does that help to be in these associations, these meetings with other top professionals like yourself?
I think it does. First of all, if you hire a lawyer who's more credentialed, so for example, in the AAML, you have to pass a federal test, a state test, get recommendations from judges and lawyers. So there is a screening process, and not everybody can be in the academy. I think of all the divorce lawyers in Connecticut, there may be 32 or 33 fellows of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers. And for the International Academy of Family Lawyers, you have to go through a vetting process as well and have an expertise in international family issues. So again, you wouldn't go to a dentist necessarily right out of dental school. You wouldn't go to a doctor who's a resident. You really want to, find the best people. And when you're getting divorced, it's not the time to save money, because if you hire the right person, what that lawyer can do in 2 hours, it could take another lawyer 20 hours to do. And at a certain level, it's all about relationships and respect from the judiciary and somebody who's creative and a problem solver.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. You often hear like, oh, I want somebody that's going to go for the jugular. I think that's the older mentality, and I think that the reason that we're here today is to create the awareness that you don't need to go for the jugular. And you and I talk about it all the time when there's children involved, right? Like, even when the divorce comes to an end, you're still connected to this person, and you will be for the rest of your life, right? Because the children, will always be the children.
Yeah, there'll be graduations, there'll be weddings, there'll be other events. So children don't want to see their parents fighting, for years and years. It doesn't serve anybody well. It can serve the lawyers well because they'll make a lot of money that way. But, getting back to who you hire as a lawyer, you want to hire a lawyer who's going to listen to you and who's really looking out for your best interests. And my view is if people have children, whether they're small or teenagers, if you don't get along and everything's a battle, the kids are never going to be okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think that that's where the pain and the trauma comes for the kids, right? Because listen, at the end of the day, the kids wanted a mom and they wanted a dad, right? All of a sudden, when that marriage is being unwound, right, they are feeling so out of control. And I think the worst thing that people can do, right, is to use the kids as pawns or to make the kids feel that they have to choose a side, or the kids feel the tension, like even just the tension itself. So if you could at least, right, avoid that, I think the kids can thrive and actually maybe be okay after the divorce.
Yeah, well, what people don't recognize, and I always try to say it, is that no two people can love the children more than the parents because they're your children. How can they? And if you don't reach a resolution yourselves, then other people will make the decision for you. So, in a fully litigated custody case, you're going to have a guardian for the children and/or a lawyer, or both. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a psychological examination. You're going to have custody evaluations, and you're going to have other people making the decision. So I certainly wouldn't want somebody else telling me how I'm going to raise my kids and do it. But what's interesting about custody is that so joint custody means that you're supposed to agree on most of the decisions. And most of the things that, people generally don't disagree. Religion is generally not an issue. Education, people want to get the best education they can for their children. Mm-hmm. And medical, most people, if the kids are sick, they want to do what they can to get the kid well. So most major decisions. So what people end up litigating and spending a lot of time over is the parenting time, and everybody agrees that at the minimum, you alternate weekends. Mm-hmm. You split the holidays and the vacations in half. So what people end up spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on is what happens Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights. That's right. And, to me, the best parenting plan is one that people never look at, and that there's flexibility between the parents, because if you have two working parents, which often you do today, you need flexibility.
Oh, you do. I mean, having been through it myself. And it's funny that you say that because I really don't look at the parenting plan, and I haven't for years. And I always wonder, like, should I be looking at it? So thank you for telling me that. Yes. It's a good thing that I'm not looking at it. But, for us, it had worked out well. And I do remember my own divorce, we went to see a mediator, and the mediator started, well, what do you think is going to be the plan? And I remember at the time, my former husband saying, well, you're the certified divorce financial analyst. You tell them what you're thinking. And it was almost like I just kind of felt this, like, peacefulness. And I just said, just because we're not going to work, right? The marriage didn't work. The family should always work. So I said, I think you should be, you're the father, 50% involved. I mean, as much as you want to be involved, I want you involved. And whatever time you don't want to do, I'll pick up. And that's kind of been our thing. I mean, it was really not an issue. And we share time. And I think I was telling you, like, we were just at our son's, annual fraternity party in Colorado. And the nice thing is you can do it well, and you can work with good attorneys, and you can have a good resolution. Nobody has to miss out on things. You can actually be in a room together when you have to be.
Oh, the kids are going to be happier. I think I might have shared a story with you about a very contentious divorce, and there's a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and the 8-year-old was performing in a school play, and it was a rare thing, but the father was coming late from work, and the mother saved a seat for him on the aisle for him to come and watch. And they had a civil conversation. And after the show, the 8-year-old comes and he walks in between them, and they walk outside, and they're having a very nice conversation. And the child says to the parents, "Thank you for being friends again." And what the psychologist who told me the story said is that the next time that this kid is on the stage and he sees his parents together, he won't be thinking about, well, if it's dad's time, I can't be nice to mom, or vice versa, and he can just be a kid. So. Again, we can't put ourselves into how people feel about the end of a marriage, because it's unique and it's sad and it can be really difficult. But the kids deserve parents who work together. And I'm lucky that I have, two great daughters who were successful, independent, living in the city, and I did it with my wife. I mean, we needed each other to whether you're in an intact marriage or not, you need to work together. It's not an easy job.
Right.
And you need the support because things come up.
I so agree. And I think it is, you're right, it's one of the hardest jobs that we do. And
Yeah, it is.
And yeah, our philosophy was we always have to show a united front. You can't show weakness. And you have to really kind of be there to support each other. So yeah, I agree with you.
But in order to have a good divorce, first of all, let's be honest, if one of the parties is a narcissist, it's extremely difficult to have a good divorce because they're a narcissist. They don't kind of want to do it nicely, and it's never anybody's, it's never their fault, it's always somebody else's fault, and they don't kind of see what their actions are doing. So if you have to divorce a narcissist, you want to try to get the best deal you can and get out and live with your life, because I don't know that it's worth it. In some of these cases, it can go on 2 or 3 years. One thing that we do a lot, we see a lot today, is mediation. So people can go to mediation on their own. I don't recommend that because they're not going to know what to ask for. They're not going to know what's fair, and they're not always going to get the financial information that they need from the other party because there's no teeth to the mediator. It's not like a court proceeding where if you don't provide disclosure, the court can make you do it. So what we will recommend is that you have lawyers representing each party, you get the information you need. If the lawyers can't resolve it amongst themselves, then you see an experienced divorce lawyer or a retired judge and help you get over the goal line and get the case resolved. It's a lot more efficient. And the courts these days they do their best, but they're ill-equipped. They have a lot more cases than judges. COVID was a real setback for timing for the judges. And by doing mediation, you can really get to the bottom line pretty quickly.
Yeah, I agree. And I also agree with you, right? Because I think sometimes without having attorneys there, one party is usually not up to par with the other one in terms of the finances. And so it could be a little lopsided if you're not represented that well during. Exactly.
And you and I have discussed, and we've worked together, I think it's also essential to have a financial professional like you in the case as early as possible that understands the numbers, can do projections as to what you might need or have going forward. It's not the lawyer's job to do that. We're not money professionals. So to me, it's really building a team. And in one of our recent cases, we worked well together, and you were able to handle with a lot of the money stuff that our client needed help with that I wasn't able to do. And she felt protected, and we were able to make decisions together based on what would be in her best interest. So that, to me, that's really, really important. And I think the sooner you get into the process, the better. And I think it's essential that after the divorce is over, that people work with financial professionals, because for some people, they have not dealt with these kinds of numbers before. They don't know exactly what to do, and they need someone that can help them and move forward and do that. So.
I agree. And I just have to add, in that particular situation that you're talking about, I loved hearing from the client when she had said to me that you're like family, right? Like you don't normally hear people saying that about their divorce attorney, right? But it really shows your character. It shows how much you care and what you do for clients. And that to me is invaluable. To me that is just, right? Because you are going through the most difficult, painful, probably thing that you're going to experience. It's pretty bad, a divorce.
Yeah, no, it is, and that's why I think when people are interviewing a divorce lawyer, they have to feel a connection. They have to feel that that person is interested in them and wants to get the right outcome, that they're not just interested in prolonging the case or take positions that the client doesn't want. We make it a policy that we won't make any substantive decision in a case without the client giving us her or his okay, because it's their life ultimately, and we will make our recommendations. They don't always have to take it, but we don't say it lightly, and we kind of know what will happen. Most of these cases, there's a range in which they get resolved, and they can be resolved relatively easily.
I agree. And I think it is nice, right, like working together, because I think you do such a great job at providing a range, right? And then doing the financial end of it, it's easy to show on paper. Well, here's your best case scenario. Here's your worst case scenario. Here's all your goals. This is how you're going to land. And I think the more we can illustrate to a client what those ranges look like, the easier it is, I think, for you to go in and settle, because the client is able to pivot. I think so many times people get stuck on, oh, it's going to look this way. And, you go into a settlement meeting and things just start getting flipped around all the time.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think it's important for people, professionals particularly, to stay in their lane and not, give advice that they're not competent to give. So, I can't tell people what you know. You can't tell them what I know,
Right.
Which is why it's important to have a team, in that, you may learn things that will be helpful to me that maybe the client will tell you that they wouldn't tell me, and vice versa. So again, I think that the most important is for the client to have a team of people that they can rely on.
Absolutely agree. So, again, with your vast experience, can you share, maybe an example of what could have been a difficult outcome, but because working, with another like-minded attorney and helping get the client through the finish line, can you share a success story that you think is worth people hearing?
Well, there are lawyers that I tend to deal with more often than others, and we've had cases where we've had custody issues, and we'll sit down, we'll try to work it out, not thinking about being advocates, but thinking about working collaboratively to come up with a solution. We can do the same thing with money. It's a question about being creative and having the trust of the person that you're dealing with. We all have a client to represent, so you're not always going to see eye to eye. But if they're people that have their heart in the right place, actually one of the things that people will ask me is if I can recommend a lawyer for their spouse that I work well with, and I'll make that recommendation. And sometimes the spouse will, if your lawyer is recommending that person, then I never want that person.
Right.
But I think that's short-sighted, because if there are a few lawyers that I work well with that I know speak the same language, we're going to get to the solution pretty easily, and again, I'd much rather, I think it's much better for a client to hear it and have it resolved that way than the other, because what people don't understand about court sometimes, and well, this goes for Connecticut, is that if a case is, you have a trial date, you can prepare for the trial, you're all ready, you put a lot of time preparing, and you get to court and the judge says, I'm sorry, we can't take your case.
Oh.
And then it can put over 4 or 5 months.
Oh my God.
And then you have to do all the work over again and get back. And then once the case is over, you have a trial that can last from 2 to 50 days, you never know. The judge has 4 months to make a decision. And if the judge can't make a decision in 4 months, they can come back to you and they ask you for more time, and if you don't give them more time, you won't like the decision. And then there's mistakes they make in the divorce judgment, and there are appeals, and I've had cases that have gone on 6 or 7 years.
Oh.
Because of that, and I don't know why people would want to do that. So, again, I think when you're interviewing lawyers, is you want to know, how often, do they litigate their case to the end? What do they do to try to facilitate a settlement? Where do they stand on custody issues? You really want to know the lawyer, because it's really be the most important person to you in that process.
No, absolutely. And could you I can't even imagine 6 or 7 years, right, what that does to your health, right? It's just the stress level. And quite often, I think you and I feel the same way, right? Sometimes you have to give a little bit. There is no price for your freedom. And it's...
Yeah, I agree with that. Sometimes I think that it's important. Our job as lawyers is we want to get as much money as we can. That's sort of what we kind of feel we should do. But I've told people sometimes that leave a little money on the table. Let the person think that he's won or she's won, because it'll make it easier to deal with the children, and you'll make up the money, and you'll get it over. I represented a gentleman many years ago, and it was no children, relatively simple case, and I had a number in mind that was a number that he should settle, that was the right number. And one day he comes to me and he says, I've decided to settle with her, and I'm going to pay her 3 times your number. And I said, really? And I said, wow. I said, I don't think I have to pay that much. And he said, as much as I like you know, I can make the money up. I don't want to be doing this the next 2 or 3 years. I just want it over with. And I said to him, you know, I understand it. I think it's smart. I wish you weren't paying so much, but I understand, and you should just move on with your life. And that's what he did. And in that particular case, he ended up getting a second marriage and divorcing the second wife. So, you know, and sometimes we get people who make the mistake twice. But, you know, I think people, they want to believe that they can find the right person, and people are optimistic.
Yeah. I was reading some statistics too that the second time the probabilities are even less of a successful marriage, and then the third goes up to like 75%, which was really kind of scary.
Yes, it's but you know, people believe in love and people want to be with somebody, and I think it's optimistic. And you know, the one thing I do recommend if you're getting married for a second or a third time is a prenuptial agreement. Right. And people often ask about the role of prenups in a divorce. Mm-hmm. So prenups are a lot more prevalent than they were when I began practicing a long time ago. In the old days, they were generally for older people who wanted to protect their children of a prior marriage. And today, people, even young people, are doing them. So they can, if they're done right, and they need to be done right, they can simplify the process at the time of divorce, but they're not absolute. And for some people, they see them as a starting point. Right. And you can litigate over prenups, and it can be just as bad as if there was no prenup. But again, I believe that it's better to have one than not to have one, and there are other options in addition to prenups, such as creating certain trusts that people do. Right. But and I say that if you're going to get married and do a prenup, do it way early. Don't wait till the last minute.
Yeah, no, I hear that, you know, there's some attorneys that won't even draft them unless you give lead time, right? Do you accept?
I mean, generally we don't. I mean, I really think you want to have it signed, sealed, and delivered about a month before the wedding.
Okay.
So.
And, you know, often, you know, I'll hear clients say, oh, well, I don't know if I want to bring that up, or that could kind of, you know, put a little pepper on the situation, and maybe it's not what I want, but it's the conversations you need to have, right? Like if you can't
talk about it when you're going to get married, then how will you be able to talk about difficult subjects later on? I mean, I say talk about it about a year before. Be honest about it. You know, you can blame other people. You know, I've had marriages that didn't happen because of the prenup, and in most of the cases they shouldn't have happened. Right. And you know, a lot of the problems in marriages are that people don't let go of their parents and their families, and I think the secret to a successful marriage is when you're a newly married couple is you're going to do things to upset each set of parents, and you have to recognize that, and you have to do what's right for the two of you and not let the parents interfere because they had their chance. It's your life, and you need to show loyalty to your wife or husband. And a lot of divorces that I've seen have been because of people not getting away from their parents and not recognizing that the loyalty should be to your spouse.
Well, that's interesting. I have not heard anybody actually say that before, and it makes so much sense. Yes. It makes so much sense. Well, I know that you have a beautiful wife and a lovely marriage, and I've had the pleasure of being with the two of you, and it's really nice to see. Like, I love seeing happy couples, and I think, why don't we just wrap up with, I mean, you have two girls, right? Yes. Beautiful girls. Now, would you give them that same advice, or how would you?
I think they know that when they get married, I want them to have prenups. Yeah. and people often ask me that what's the secret of being married. I'm married over 36 years, and I say, well, my wife knows all the divorce lawyers that hate my guts and would represent her for nothing. So I have to be careful. But I honestly think that a lot of relationships are based on luck. I mean, you have to work at a relationship, and some things you just can't work on, and some people it's just never going to work. Right. But just because you can't have a good marriage doesn't mean you can't have a good divorce and move on and respect each other and be co-parents.
Well, I don't think we can end on a better note than that today. That is wonderful advice. Thank you so much, Fred, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Hope to have you on again soon. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining.